Now, towards the end of last year, Evolution Power Tools contacted me and asked me if I'd like to try out the Evolution R255SMS Mitre saw. Of course I said yes, and in January this year I received the saw. Evolution said to me to make sure I give it a good try and put it through its paces before I carry out a review video, which is what I've done, and this is what we're going to do today. So the saw itself, let's check out its specs before we go through what it's capable of. So if we have a look at the ID plate here on the side of the motor, it states that the model of the saw is the R255SMS, as already stated. It comes with a 2000 watt motor. The blade will spin at a max of 2500 revolutions per minute. The outer diameter of the blade is 255mm and the inner diameter, which sits on the arbor flanges, is 25.4mm. It has a max cutting capacity of 300mm in length and 80mm in depth. The saw itself comes fitted with this multi-material blade. It states it's a 2mm kerf. It can cut through steel at 6mm, wood with nails, and has a maximum capacity to spin at 3250 revolutions per minute. And if we take a look at this sticker here on the side of the base plate, it tells you the different cutting capacities with the saw either beveled to 45 degrees or tilted to 45 degrees, and tilted and beveled to 45 degrees. So one of the main differences I noticed between this saw and the Rage 3, which I did previously own, was the handle. This handle has been designed to account for left and right handed people operating the saw. Not only that, if you're operating the saw and you want to hold your stock this side, it's fine, but I've seen people use the saw and crisscross it themselves. Well, you don't need to do that now if you're not confident in using the saw with your non-dominant hand, because you can, instead of having a crisscross like that, you can still hold the stock down and just change hands. This blade release catch is far superior to the previous one. It just feels much more comfortable in hand, and it's much easier just to hit down whilst you're using the saw. This saw has this rather chunky and easy to use locking handle located at the front of it, and the saw will turn to the left and to the right 50 degrees. The saw already has locking notches cut out at 0 degrees, 15 degrees, 22.5 degrees, 30 degrees and finally 45 degrees. I also really like this handle located at the back of the saw to unlock the tilting motion. The saw will tilt from 0 to 45 degrees, and if you push this locking pin in here, the saw will also tilt to 33.5 degrees. Now, a new feature with this saw are these removable extendable plastic wings. They're much better and secure than the metal brackets that you get that come up, which are on the previous model. However, with mine, if I put a straight edge across the saw, you'll see that they don't sit completely flush with the body of the saw. Now, I did try and spend a bit of time trying to level them out by packing them with washers. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it quite right, and I just left it how it was. Maybe this is just a one-off issue of mine, I don't know, but it's not hugely out, but nevertheless it's still not completely flat. Now, I have watched a few other people's reviews of this saw, and one thing that a few people have commented on is the squareness of the fence to the saw blade when the saw first turns up. Now, my opinion is it takes 5 minutes to adjust the fence flush with the blade. There's a couple of bolts either side of the fence, and it's really simple to adjust it. And at the end of the day, the saw does turn up flat packed, so you're never ever going to have a true and accurate reading of the fence and the blade together until you just make a small adjustment. And like I said, it takes 5 minutes. On the left hand fence, it has this locking screw located on it, and if you're cutting a long piece of stock, you can extend the fence out to help to support it. An extra feature on this saw is on the right hand fence it has a measuring guide, and if I put a tape measure up against it, you'll see it's extremely accurate, and I find it really good to use. So let's now test the accuracy of the bevel cuts. I've cut some of these pieces of wood out I have one set up here already, so we're going to make a 45-degree cut there. We'll make another 45-degree cut on the other side, and we'll see if we can make a like a picture frame square type of thing. One thing I would like to say is this clamp here, I much prefer the design of this one to the original bell-shaped one that they used to have, because this is actually really clamp the wood really solid, because you've obviously got this foot here that can clamp it down against that, and this one clamps it on top of the wood. Now I'm just getting ready to cut the bevel on this piece of wood, and after singing the praises of the clamp, this has happened. Just as I removed the clamp, it actually fell apart. It's no great big deal because it's held in place with a little circlip. Don't know if the camera picked that up. So it can easily be repaired, but in the grand scheme of things, when I'm doing a review video, it's not the best thing to happen, and that design probably could be greatly improved to avoid that happening, as I know it's happened to a few other people as well. So with all our angle bits cut, I've put them together, and this is what I've come out with. It's not perfect. You can see there's this gap here and one there. I've checked all the pieces, they all line up, they're all accurate sizes. Again, as I found with my table saw, the angle gauge I think on this saw is ever so slightly out, so when you have numerous joins, when it gets to the last one and you put them together, they're always going to be out if these ones are tight. Now there is two extra safety features on this saw that wasn't on the previous model. It has a braked blade, so it means that when I let go of the trigger, the blade stops a lot sooner, and it has a soft start function. Now let's see if the saw will actually do what it says it will do. So this piece of 6mm box section, we'll try cutting this first. And all the cuts that you'll see coming up are in real time. I've not sped them up or anything. And a little piece that I cut off here, you'll see is left a really neat and nice smooth finish on it, and is actually stone cold, is not hot at all to touch. So obviously if it's going to cut through that, I'm guessing it's going to cut through this piece of copper pipe I have. Went through with no ease. It did leave a small little burr on the end, but that soon broke off, and again this was nice and cold to touch. So got this piece of composite decking, and we'll try cutting that next. And again, the blade went through it no problem whatsoever and left a really smooth finish. However, one thing I noticed was all these little bits of what I can describe as swarf coming from the composite decking. And this is where the extraction system lets itself down, as I noticed, as you can see here, when I cut out my barbecue cart, all the wood for that, although I had the dust extraction connected, I was left with all this dust afterwards. And if you're going to use this saw in a small workshop, you'll probably get fed up vacuuming down the saw every time you use it. Another feature on this saw is it has the ability to make trench cuts. By undoing this locking nut here, it will raise the blade up, and then when you put a sacrificial fence in behind, you can then make your trench cuts in the piece of wood that you want to cut, or of course metal. And you can see here that it does make the trench cuts no problem whatsoever. The saw is fitted with a laser, as you can see here, although it's not showing up very well in the light, and I did notice this in the sunlight. When you move the blade down to the wood that you want to cut, it shows up quite well then, and it's actually extremely true and flush. You can turn the laser off as I've done here. You simply lower this handle, and with this little switch here next to my thumb, you can slide it back and then the laser will be back on. So there we go, that is my unbiased review of the Evolution R255 sliding mitre saw. It's a real shame about the clamp coming apart when it did, because I've owned the saw 9 months and I've used it a hell of a lot in that time, and the clamp, and I've not had an issue with it at all. Probably not the best thing to break during a review video, but now I've put it back together. It took no time at all, so I can put that back on the saw. Maybe if I spent a little bit more time refining and adjusting saw, I might be able to get those mitre cuts a little bit closer, but I don't think I'd ever get them perfect. The biggest thing for me though that lets the saw down is the dust collection facility. I think if the dust collection was that much better, this saw would be a really good choice, especially for a small space like this. Unfortunately it's not. Even with the dust extraction connected, it didn't really improve it that great a deal. So to summarise, to me Evolution come across as a company that are aiming their tools at the DIY sort of person and the job site sort of person. So if you're cutting lots of noggins and framing battens and things like that, the saw's more than adequate. And especially if you're cutting things with nails in, is absolutely fine for things like that. If you want to do the more intricate cuts and the more fine sort of cuts, maybe if you change the blade for a wood blade, it would help it. But I think you'd need to spend a little bit more money as well to get a much more refined saw. So although this review has highlighted a few issues with the saw, equivalent saws in the same price bracket probably are less quality from what I've seen anyway. So until I can find something that's better for equivalent price or maybe a little bit more, I'll continue to use this mitre saw, and I'm happy to do so. So there we go. If you liked my honest review, please make sure you give me a thumbs up. Check out the links below to Evolution Power Tools, who I'd also like to thank for sending me this tool, for giving me the opportunity to review it. Make sure you're a subscriber, and I'll see you again next week in another video.